This story is strange and twisty and turny. It might have been a little hard to follow in the scripture as Kent was reading it. So here's a really short rundown. Sarah and Abraham, sometimes first called Sarai and Abram when we first meet them in Genesis, because it's before the new covenant they make with God when their names are changed, are old. They are faithful to God. They don't have children yet. And so Sarai, in a practice that was common in the ancient world, says, perhaps if my slave girl Hagar has a child with you, that's a way that I could have children through her. So she suggests this to Abraham, who says, okay, that sounds fine. And they go along with it. And then Hagar does get pregnant. And then Sarah becomes jealous. She says that Hagar is flaunting it in front of her. And so Sarah goes to Abraham and she's mad. She's jealous and she's mad. And Abraham, who in this story we sort of get the sense wants peace at all costs, he doesn't take a lot of strong stands here, says, well, she's your slave girl. Whatever you want to do is okay with me. And so Sarah tells Hagar to leave. And we see that Hagar goes out into the wilderness, and who appears but an angel of God? And the angel of God says to her, go back. Go back to the house and it will be okay. And your son will also be a leader of a great generation of peoples. And so Hagar trusts God, has faith in God that God will be with her on the journey, and she goes back to the house. And we're told that she has a child, and he is named Ishmael. And then you fast forward a little bit, and Sarah ends up, though she is very old, having a child as well, and he is named Isaac. And then she sees that Ishmael and Isaac are playing together, and she gets jealous again. And she goes to Abraham and she says, okay, you got to tell her to leave. Because that other child of yours is not going to inherit with my son Isaac. And Abraham, again, although we're told he feels bad about it, he says, okay, that sounds fine. And he tells them to leave, although he sends them out with some bread and some water. And then the part of the story that Ken ended on was where they're out in the wilderness, they've drunk all the water. And Hagar is despairing because she knows that lost in the desert with no more water, she and her child Ishmael will die. And so she says, I can't look on the death of my child. And who appears again but God? And God presents to her a spring of water and says that I will take care of you, that your son Ishmael will survive and will be the beginning of a great generation. And so what's interesting to think about is that Ishmael is the person to whom our Muslim sisters and brothers trace their ancestry, back to Abraham through Ishmael. And so when we talk about the Abrahamic faiths, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and how they are tied together, it's because they are rooted in this story of Abraham and Sarah and Hagar and all of their complex relationships. And these two half-brothers, Ishmael, from which Islam traces its heritage, and Isaac, from which Judaism and Christianity trace theirs. And it reminds us of how bound up we really are in one another's lives, even when we feel so distinctly different from one another.